She thought it was just another day, another meeting, another reminder of how little power one woman was supposed to have. But what no one expected was that this time the story wouldn't end with silence. It began with land. Land passed down through generations, land that carried her family's history, their sweat, their roots. For years, it sat quietly until someone else saw an opportunity. A powerful homeowners association swept in, confident, ruthless, and certain that this black woman wouldn't fight back. They built 96 homes on what wasn't theirs, believing no one would notice, or worse, that no one would care. But they were wrong, because Evelyn noticed, and what happened next would expose not just greed, but the deeper injustice buried beneath America's soil. What would you do if the very ground your family built its life upon was stolen in plain sight? This is the story of a woman who refused to be erased. Evelyn was not extraordinary in the way people think of heroes. She lived a quiet life, one filled with family dinners, Sunday mornings at church, and memories of her grandparents telling stories about the land that had been theirs for decades. That soil was more than property. It was the heartbeat of her family. Her grandparents had worked it with their bare hands, survived hardships most couldn't imagine, and made sure it stayed in the family through war, poverty, and countless attempts to take it away. Evelyn grew up walking those fields, knowing every tree, every stone, every story tied to it. To her, the land was a legacy. To others, it was just acreage, profitable, desirable, and waiting to be seized. For years, she had paid the taxes, kept the deeds safe, and carried the weight of protecting what her ancestors had fought to hold on to. But trouble rarely announces itself loudly. It starts quietly, in whispers, in rumors, in little signs. A road being paved too close, a surveyor's markers appearing without her permission, neighbors talking about new development plans. At first, Evelyn brushed it off. People made promises of growth all the time. But then she saw it, the foundation of a house going up on her land. Not one, but dozens. At that moment, the air shifted. Something wasn't right. And what she didn't yet realize was that her entire legacy was on the verge of being stolen. The days that followed felt like watching her world unravel in slow motion. Bulldozers rolled over the soil where her grandfather had planted crops. Trucks poured concrete over the very earth where her family had gathered every summer. Each new frame of a house was a nail driven into the heart of her history. Evelyn confronted the workers, demanded answers, but they brushed her off. "Talk to the HOA," they said. The Homeowners Association claimed they had purchased the land legally, their lawyers waving papers in her face as though history could be rewritten with ink. Evelyn knew the truth. The land was hers. She held the original deeds, signed and sealed long before anyone had ever heard of this HOA. But truth and power rarely walk hand in hand. The more she pushed, the more resistance she faced. Officials dismissed her. Neighbors looked the other way. She was told she didn't understand, that maybe she was mistaken, that maybe she should let it go. But how do you let go of generations? How do you watch strangers build lives on soil soaked with your family's blood, sweat, and sacrifice? Every day, the injustice grew heavier, the sense of being erased more suffocating. Yet, Evelyn refused to back down. She gathered her documents, lined up her proof, and prepared for battle. The HOA thought they had buried her under concrete and contracts. What they didn't realize was that Evelyn had set a trap. Each board they nailed, each house they built, each dollar they invested, was on land that never belonged to them. And one day soon, the reckoning would come. The moment of confrontation was unlike anything Evelyn had ever experienced. She walked into the boardroom of the HOA with a box in her hands. Inside were the deeds, yellowed, creased, but undeniable. The men at the table smirked, their confidence unshaken. To them, she was just one woman. But as she laid the documents out, page by page, the room shifted. The seal, the signatures, the lineage. It was all there. For a moment, silence filled the air, heavy and suffocating. The weight of history pressed down, undeniable and unbreakable. The HOA members scrambled, their lawyers fumbling for explanations. But there was no way around it. They had built 96 homes on land that didn't belong to them. Evelyn stood, firm, her hands trembling, but her voice steady. Years of dismissal, humiliation, and invisibility had led to this instant. She wasn't just defending land. She was defending her family, her past, her very right to exist. The walls seemed to close in, the men's faces pale with realization. The trap had snapped shut, and there was no escape. For the first time, Evelyn wasn't the one on trial. They were. Evelyn's battle didn't end with that dramatic moment in the boardroom. The HOA fought back with lawyers, delays, and appeals. But the truth was undeniable. Piece by piece, the system that had ignored her was forced to acknowledge her. The deeds she carried became her shield, her weapon, and ultimately her victory. After months of struggle, Evelyn reclaimed her family's land, not just on paper, but in reality. The homes that had been built without her consent became evidence of how easily power tried to erase history, and how one woman's determination exposed it all. But the win was bittersweet. She had proven her rights, yet the scars remained. The endless nights of fear, the humiliation of being dismissed, the knowledge that if she hadn't fought with everything she had, her family's story would have been erased forever. Evelyn's victory was more than personal. It was a reminder of a truth too often buried: stolen land, stolen labor, stolen futures. For generations, Black families across America have seen their legacies taken, their wealth stripped, their voices silenced. Evelyn's story is one among thousands, a spark in a fire that still burns. Her triumph forces us to ask, how many others never had the chance to fight back? How many families lost everything, their names erased from the soil they once called home? Evelyn's resilience shows that justice is possible, but it also shows just how much it costs. And it leaves us with a question that cannot be ignored. If the system is built to silence stories like hers, how long will we let it stand before we demand change? Because this isn't just Evelyn's story. It's America's story, and it cannot be forgotten.